Hello, everyone. This is Mark with Sales Wisdom. Thank you for joining us today on episode number 3 of the journey of great salespeople. And today's journey is going to be brought to us by Eric Zirbel. And Eric had a start in his career in production and print. He worked his way up the ladder in production and to a director's position in technology. Then Eric had the opportunity to move over to the OEM side of the business, technology side at HP. Started as a solution architect, providing technical and sales support for his sales team and for his customers. Then eventually he had an opportunity to move over into sales, and now he is one of the top salespeople for for the industry's leading OEM brand, HP. So everyone, please welcome Eric Zirbel. Eric, great to have you, and thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity. Great to hear that. What was I, number 3 on your podcast here of great salespeople? Hopefully, I can live up to the expectations.
Yeah,
But thanks for the intro.
absolutely. Definitely no tests involved today, but yeah, you're batting third, and that's a great spot to be in for
Without
sure.
a doubt, I'm going to get on base for you. Here you go.
Yeah, and I can't get by like just when we talked the first time. That truck behind you is beautiful. It's a great story also too, and that you maybe there's a really short version, but how you built that thing together with your son. What that's an
Yeah, that
awesome
might
story.
be a whole separate podcast that we could
Yeah.
probably host. But yeah, hand built by myself, and yeah, really as an opportunity, when my son, so about 17 years ago, so it's been a labor of love. It was an opportunity to teach my son at the time, he was 10, mechanics, teach him, a little bit of hard work, busting knuckles and learning electronics and learning mechanical and all that kind of good stuff. So it soon morphed into just my project as a lot as they get into the
Teenage years,
teenage
right?
year, yeah, the teenage years and everything like that. But yeah, it's been a labor of love, and it's now my backdrop, and use it every other day for sure.
I love it. That's a great backdrop. So
Yeah.
from the excitement of custom auto building over to the print industry, I guess a good place for us to start is for you, what originally brought you into the print industry? Was it something that was in your family? Was it an accident? How did all of that occur for you, Eric?
I think it's all those things. I think it's all those things. It's interesting that as we started talking or you were talking and doing the intro for me, and what's my origin story, and I started thinking about that, and really it's been some of it by happenstance, some of it based upon innate skills, some of it is a desire to thrive. But I would say if you really look back, if I really go back to it, so my dad was a graphic artist. So my dad worked with his hands. He also did carpentry and things like that. Um, Another podcast, kind of an estranged relationship between father and son and all that stuff. But I think some of the skills that he had, I also had innately, and I definitely watched him throughout the years. And he used to do, he would go on photo shoots, and he would do, paste up mechanicals, for the youth out there, right? I don't know if they know what mechanicals are, but he would do a lot of stuff like that I would sort of tag along and go and see and be around, and he would work into the wee smalls, and I would see him either drawing or doing paste up on these mechanicals and things like that, and I kind of gravitated towards that, and I was like, wow, this is really neat. And but it was quite interesting. I was actually not even living with him at the time, and so I was 14, going back to it. I was 14, working at Circuit City, if those of you remember Circuit City, and also Baskin Robbins, and going to high school. And they had just canceled like auto shop and workshop, wood shop and things like that. And I was like, oh man, this is kind of frustrating, this and that. Well, I'm working at Circuit City, and one of my friends comes in with her dad, and I'm showing him around. Oh, check out these TVs and all this stuff. And he says, how much do you make here? After I'm trying to paraphrase a little bit here, but he's like, how much money do you make here? I said, I don't know, I make like I don't know, at the time, maybe $3.25 or something like that. I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, but you're also working over at Baskin Robbins. I said, well, yeah, there's only so many hours here that I can pick up, and I need a little bit more money because I'm saving up for this, that, or the other, probably a car part or something.
Yeah.
And so I was working two jobs, going to high school, playing sports, very, very busy. He goes, well, I could use some help over at my shop. And I said, well, what do you do? He goes, well, I own a print shop. And I was just like,
What's that?
what is that? Well,
Yeah.
I kind of knew because of my
Yeah.
dad, right? I kind of knew. And turns out it wasn't a print shop, it was a service bureau. It was a company called Creative Color. And they did a lot of the pre-press work and making plates for James River Corporation, so packaging industry and things like that.
Mm.
They also did other things like Thomas Kincaid, so they did scanning, they did camera separations and all that kind of good stuff. Well, I definitely wasn't hired to do any of that. I was hired to do grunt work, but I took the opportunity to be around the environment, and so I started for probably about 6 months or so. All I did was really I cleaned rapid access processors.
Yeah.
So, so developer, fixer, and all that stuff, and in the dark room, and obviously worked my way all the way through the ranks, and what I wanted to do when I got into an environment like that was, and I didn't know this at the time. I'm a young buck, right? I didn't know this, but I wanted to make myself employable. So, meaning that I wanted to learn everything that was to do
Mm.
with that shop. And it was a union shop at the time, which was interesting because I couldn't be in, I was too young to be in the union, but I could be there as like kind of like a temp, like contract worker. So I wasn't officially on the books
Yeah.
type of thing. So it was very interesting to see how union shops operate. And I really didn't know any different, right, at the
Right.
time.
Yep.
But those union jobs back then, the union, so this was 1988, 80, yeah, 80, yeah, 80, 87, 88, somewhere around there. And unions were strong. Unions were strong back then, right? So you had the shop foreman and you had, all the underlings. And what I found is a lot of those employees really coveted their their skill sets. They only shared just a little bit because they were trying to keep their jobs. And some of them were aging, right? And they were like, man, I don't want some young buck coming in and taking my job. So the union sort of classified those employees. But I still wanted to learn. So I made myself super annoying, but I wanted to learn everything. And so you say like, how did you get into it? Well, I think I had some skills. I think I had some an idea of what I kind of wanted to do, but you're 14, 15, 16, you don't really know.
Right.
But then, just by happenstance, a friend of mine's father came in and said, "Hey, I needed some help over at the print shop," and it just kind of it took off from there. I got the bug. I got the graphic arts bug, and
Yep.
I never looked back. Yeah.
Yeah, people say you get the ink in your veins or whatever, but it's incredible. There's so few of us, it seems, that charted a course by design into print,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you have a family business, obviously, I think that's not uncommon. But for the rest of us, very few people knew about it. You knew a little, like you said, you had some exposure.
Yep.
What a great story that is. And I couldn't help but think, listening as you were talking about the union people and their concern. That doesn't sound all that unfamiliar or unlike today with AI and other automation, people coveting their skills and their positions and
Yep.
not wanting, understandably,
Yep.
concerns and fears about losing that. So Eric, that's a great story, and you worked your way through production, like you said, and that's being good in production in any manufacturing process. And you and I know print the best, same with our most of our audience. So we
Yeah.
know what it's entailed to become really good at that. But sales is a very different career, typically a different path, a lot of times a different skill set, but somehow you worked your way over to that. So once you went from, maybe start by how you viewed it when you went over to HP, and then like step B when you went from supporting sales into actually being the lead person in sales.
Yeah.
How did
So
all of that work for you?
so interesting you say that. So being able to, how did I say it? Make myself employable, right? Learning all
Yeah,
those different
that was
positions and all
great.
that, right? And so fast forward, 15 years later or so, about 2000, well, 2001 is when a shop that I was working for called House of Printing, and I was doing general management there. We decided to invest into digital. Well, I was pushing it. I was pushing it. I have sort of a skill set where uh, I like to take ownership of projects. Some might call it controlling, what have you. But
Yep.
with digital, I was able to do so much more. I was able to do the pre-press work. I could run the press. I could output it. Add some small finishing. So I found that I was able to sell the owner on the fact that I could do all this as a one-stop shop. So I set up this department, started doing all that, doing very, very well. Well, the HP sales reps at that time kept bringing customers in to talk to me about my experiences to help them sell, right? To help them sell. So I would stand in front of the equipment and I would show, hey, or I would get in front of the computer. I'd show them how to set up pre-press files, show them how to send it to the press and output it and then finish and go here. This is one operator. One operator can do it, right? And so I was not knowing that I was doing selling, but I was helping them sell. So I guess I did it pretty well. The fact that HP then courted me to come over and do exactly that. I had a fancy title when I first started. It was called Solutions Architect. And I did that for about 10 years. And essentially that's what I did was technical consulting. And it was quite interesting because not knowing that I was really grooming myself for sales or really that I was in sales support. But quickly I would take over a lot of the meetings and everything because the way that I am and it ended up being like more of a sales type position, just sort of organically, right? Because I was consulting, I was educating, I was proving concept and things like that. I would always stop short of getting into the numbers, right? Because definitely didn't want to, get the sales guy, angry with me that I said the wrong number or something like that.
Yep.
But I was proving concept. And throughout those years, I covered a pretty large territory. I covered from Colorado out to Alaska and Hawaii. And there's different sales reps in each one of those areas. And the geographical areas on the West Coast, selling in Seattle is not the same as selling in Utah and is not the
Right.
same as selling in LA, right? And it comes down to people, it comes down to, the demographic, what have you. But I found that certain personality types in each area were more successful based upon the geography that they were in. And so I really started getting into the psychology and really looking at, how people communicate and what the successful salespeople were actually doing that made them successful. And some of that depended upon, their style really depended upon the geography that they were in. And not only that, the type of customers, type of companies that they were going into. So you really had to know your audience, essentially. So I
Hmm.
learned a lot. I learned a lot, did that for about 10 years. And then essentially what happened how I became a sales rep for HP, actually being an account manager, was the guy in my area was going to retire. So I know that oftentimes when salespeople retire or you have an opportunity, it's a small window. Like either you're going to do that or somebody else is going to come in. They're going to dig roots and they're going to stay there for the next 10 to 15 years and there might not have an opportunity. I never saw myself as a salesperson ever. No, not one bit. Because I think the term salesperson comes with a stigma, right? Oh, sales guy. Oh, you
Yep.
know what I mean? And I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to be the problem solver. I wanted to, do all that, all the good stuff, get all the good stuff out of the energy that was happening. And yeah, never saw it, but it was an opportunity. I said, you know what? I can always fall back. I could always fall back on the technical side. Let's try it. So I talked to my
Yeah.
wife, we had the long conversations, and it was like, yeah, let's try this for a few years and see if it works out. well, here I am. That was 2015.
10
So,
years.
11 years, or
Yeah.
so. And yeah, still doing it and still enjoying it.
And
Surprisingly that I'm enjoying it,
yeah.
So
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that you do. And for those who don't know, I mean, Eric really does a great job.
thank you.
You mentioned something I want to follow up on. You worked with different salespeople, and of course, I knew some of who you're talking about. I'm going to hold back on some of that, but just in general, were the salespeople helpful to you? Did they help you, encourage you, mentor you a little bit? Did you ask them? Were they with you on your journey, do you think? And I'm sure there was differences amongst all of them, but how did you find working with other salespeople as you were also learning the sales trade at the same time?
I think it varied. I think it varied, and I think that just comes down to the people, and I just think that I can't say it's
Hmm.
one thing. I think some were helpful, some were not as, some were very helpful, I would say, in mentoring. And I always try to take nuggets of information from everybody, right? I'm always looking towards a mentor. The people in my life that are close and dear to me, um, and that goes with a lot of different things. They offer me something, and that's not that I'm selfish in any way, but what I try to find, everybody's got something good in them to share, I guess. Even the most brass of salesmen, right? Even the most abrasive of salespeople, you can learn something from them. The ones that are super, super helpful, you can learn from them obviously as well, right? But I would say it's up to the individual. Like if you have to be receptive. You have to put yourself out there and you have to be receptive and willing to learn. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And take
Matter,
correcting and
matter
guidance
of
and
fact,
all of that. Yeah.
I picked up a book the other day and it's The Common Sense Cowboy's Guide to Life, stories from the old guy at the end of the bar. So
Yeah.
I'm learning from an old guy at the end of the bar, right? Still, and I feel like I'm that old guy at the end of the bar now. But you have to constantly just make yourself receptive. So I would say that some were helpful, and some I had to find that nugget. But
Yeah.
everybody has something to share. Everybody does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now here you are, you've arrived, right? You're in sales, you've got your territory. You're not that guy showing up at the meeting with the good news or the straight talk or here's the guy who really knows what's behind all of this. Now you're that frontline guy, you're in sales. So there's obviously a lot of good things that come along with that, usually take time to get to. But there's also some challenges. So for you, what were some of the initial challenges you found that maybe you didn't think about, you weren't aware, nobody had kind of told you, or you hadn't even observed previously?
Yeah, there's a couple things there. Right. So if you visualize, I've been with HP now for 20 years. We're just talking sales, right? We're just talking about my sales career itself, right? So 20
Yep.
years or so, 10 years in direct sales, and let's call it 10 years in support sales role. Um, as soon as it was interesting. I know a lot of my customers and I know a lot of them intimately as I'm going through and doing the solution architect thing. And, I'm the guy who's coming in to oftentimes to save the day, right? I'm the guy coming in to help. As soon as I put that sales hat on, as soon as I had account manager on my business card, it was amazing to see like that relationships change. And nobody ever warned me that. Nobody ever warned, because now I'm trying to take something from them.
Yeah.
From their perspective, I want something of theirs. Instead of me coming in and helping them and giving them, instead of being the giver, I'm the taker. And
Yeah.
I never even, I mean, I guess to some degree, I knew that that was going to be the role, but I didn't think it was going to be as drastic of a change with the customers that I had already knew for many, many years. And it's interesting. I can speak to some examples, but I'll leave it off of this podcast. But
Oh,
it's something that I did not anticipate, right?
yeah.
And I think the other thing uh, to expound upon that is I had some initial great success. And I think that did me a disservice. And
Mm.
people go, "Oh, you want to go into sales because you want to be successful." Yeah, yeah, you can. It was interesting to have some great successes, and oh, this is how it's going to be. Okay, cool. Because you're trending, you're oh, okay. I'm doing good, and then all of a sudden the tough times come, and I had to admit to myself, I didn't have the skill set. I didn't have the skill set at that time to weather that storm. And so there was a learning curve. Even though I felt like I've been doing this for a long time in the technical sales role, and a couple of few years of like really good sales, just getting into it, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So
Yep.
it was interesting, and I've definitely learned. I've come out of that, and I feel like I'm in my wheelhouse now. But it takes time. It's not instant. It's
Yeah,
not
and
it's
so
not instant.
what were some of the things you did once that reality kind of hit you in the face like that? It's like the sophomore year thing, right? You come out in freshman year and you do great. It seems really easy, and now all of a sudden you've got some challenges, right? And like you said, maybe you didn't develop the full level of fundamentals. So what were some of the things that I know you well enough that I know you went back and made some type of a plan or had some type of idea what you wanted to do. So do you remember what were some of those things you thought about at that time?
Became a consultant in a different type of way, learning the numbers better. What makes them tick? What makes the owners tick to make them want to invest with you, right? Um, and that's different than just a technical sales, right? When you're looking at somebody who's looking at spending a $500,000 to $1 million, it can be painful for them if they're just they don't just buy on the come, right? You really have to prove to them. So I had to learn the numbers better. And I also had to learn people better. So, how I
Mm,
communicated with those owners, with those top level employees, the way that I communicated was different. I didn't always have to share everything that I knew.
yeah,
And,
that's a
and
good
that's
point.
that's very, very, that was difficult for me because I was always excited to just regurgitate everything that I knew. My brain is that type of brain, is just always firing and all that, right? And learning when to, it's not withholding, but it's when to use the information that you have to share
Exactly.
effectively. And
Yeah.
that's something you learn over time. You learn with the gray in your goatee and the hair, right? It's you learn that over time. You learn that over
Exactly.
time.
It's because it's counterintuitive, right?
It
For
really
people
is.
who are enthusiastic, want to help, want to solve a problem, love to communicate, to find the right timing for something you already know, it's not a natural process. It's definitely a learned skill,
Yeah,
right?
and then I kind of go back and I go back to my mental notes of like some of the sales reps that were successful at that time. There's one in particular, and I think you know him as well. He was very good in the silence, getting comfortable with the awkward silence. You don't always have to fill the dead space. You don't have to fill, right? You don't have to suck the oxygen out of the room to get something out of a conversation. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting concept. Yeah. And so like
I,
during COVID, I was like, you know what? I still want to enhance this and everything like that. I decided to do University of Phoenix. I got a bachelor's degree in communication just because I wanted to keep my brain active, and how can I use, or what can I do to help my sales and actually it helps the personal life as well, right? In my interpersonal skills in communication. And so I got a bachelor's degree in communication. That definitely helped. But yeah, yeah, that's about it.
yeah, seeking help again is one of those things maybe for people in general, men even more so, and salespeople maybe the most, right? To seek help. But I think the fact that you reached out, you made some changes. How about at this point? Are there people in the organization? Is there someone or something outside of the organization that you're looking at that says, yeah, this is presenting some good ideas and some good models for me for sales? And what might be for people who are just learning that part of their career in the learning stage of sales, what might be a few things you might suggest to them about that?
Well, there's this fantastic guy. His name's Mark Pomerantz, and he's giving back to the community.
Stop
Um,
the tape.
you're blushing, Mark. You're blushing. Um,
I wasn't fishing, I promise you.
just getting into the career, I think you know, I would say it's interesting because you also have to check your health, your sleep, you have to check yourself, meaning when you're going into a sales environment, and let's say you're in an active sales mode. Customers feed off of your energy. They feed off of what you're giving. You can try and hide it. You can try and hide it. It doesn't always work, right? So when you're young and you're energetic, and let's say you have to sell some equipment by the end of this quarter, whatever, right? And you come in there and you're agitated, and you know this person's close to signing. Just sign, just sign, just do it. That's not going to be effective. It's actually going to be it's not going to work essentially. So you have to kind of, for especially for the youth, and I see it all the time when and people are new into sales, and I think I was that way as well. And I kind of saw it, like it was like, yeah, I remember kind of going in there like that, going in there guns blazing and saying, I know this is the right thing for you, even if it is the right thing for you, even for them, even if it makes the best financial sense and all that stuff. If you come in there high energy and you're pressuring it, they're going to feed upon that. I mean, and they're going to hold back. And
Yeah.
it comes down to human nature. You have to make people comfortable. You have to be able to talk about various things, your life experiences and stuff like that. And it's also really good to say, I don't know. I
Yes.
have a team behind me. I don't know your business like I should. Tell me more about your business, ask more questions, things like that. But also say that, yeah, I don't really know this part of the business, but I do have a business development person, or I do know this other customer that knows so and so, or something like that. You will have something to share in that regard, but don't come across like you know everything, because that person across the table might know 10 times more than you. So don't
Yeah.
come across like a know-it-all.
Exactly. And you also have a former you supporting you somewhere, right? And you
I do.
remember yourself like how you used to be able to help clients like that too. And one thing I used to say to people, if you try and portray that you know everything, you only have to make one mistake then to be out
That's
completely.
right.
Right. And
That's
that's
right.
those are not good odds. I don't like those. So yeah, reaching out for help, that's some great advice there, Eric. Uh, it's interesting because you've had kind of, I don't, let's say roughly half of your career in sales or sales related and half not in it, right?
Right.
So I'm sure you had some ideas or thoughts or perceptions, and you shared some of those already about sales. Now you can look back over 20 years. What are one or two things that the average person, obviously who's not in sales, really has no clue, doesn't understand what it's like really to have sales as your career.
That you are, let me think about that. That's a tough question. The thing that comes to mind is another one is that you are not only selling to your customer, but you're selling internally as well. So before, because I'm selling capital equipment, right? I'm selling printing presses, and you have to sell to the customer to have the opportunity, right, to be able to sell internally. So by the time I actually get paid on a machine that's been put in, I probably sold it 5 different times to 5 different people,
Yeah.
right? So quite often, I mean, it's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint, however they say it, but it's one of those things that you're selling multiple times in various ways to various people, and
Yeah.
being effective in each one of those areas in different ways will help you be successful.
Yeah, people don't realize that along the lines of what you're saying, salespeople we're one of the few in any organization that has to interact with virtually everybody
Right.
and have some understanding and be able to be relatable to them and win them over and sell them, like you said, internally to support your efforts and all of that. And that's something that's not visible, generally speaking,
Well, it's always helped
outside of
me
the world of
sell the
sales.
fact that I've worked in a shipping department. I've mopped floors. I've done camera separations. I've run printing presses. I've been there. I've done that. I've been a general manager. I've had to fire people. I've had to, I've given raises, so I've sort of been there and done that. But once again, you don't always have to share that, but it helps me, right, in my sales, in the way that I approach it. Uh, because I have empathy.
Empathy and credibility
Yeah,
also too, I would add, that gives you and helps you be relatable.
yeah.
I mean, and let's face it, I mean, have no two people are the same in any in given situation. So being able to be relatable to people in their wherever they are in their journey, right? You have to
Yeah.
find a way to meet them there at wherever
Right,
they're at that moment.
right.
That's there's a lot of good books and things like that about sales, but you're not going to find how to do that in any book,
Oh
really.
my God. Like you asked, like, oh, what did you do when you were struggling? Oh, I read them all. The Seven Habits of Highly Successful People and, Eckhart Tolle. You go down through all the self-help books and all the sales wisdoms. You watch the movies, Glenn Geary, Glenn Close. You go
Yeah.
through all that, right? You get deep, right? You get deep and wide inside of the sales and all that stuff. But it does come down sometimes just to human nature and having empathy and understanding and problem solving.
Yep. And which all that requires that you have to care ultimately about what it is and the people you're doing it with. And it's hard to be successful
And
if
you
you
have
don't
to care
care.
about yourself too. My wife says this, behind every good man there's a good wife, but she says you have to be selfish enough to be selfless for other people.
Interesting.
So you have to be selfish to some degree, right? To be able to help other people.
Yeah.
So number one, that's all I was talking about, like sleep and your health and all that kind of stuff and your energies. You have to take care of yourself in order to be able to give to other people. So you have to be selfish to be selfless.
Tell your wife that's a great saying. I've never heard that, but I love that. I'm going to steal that one or borrow it, I should
There
say,
you
in
go.
some way going forward. Hey, Eric, just to wrap, this has been great, and just to wrap up here, I want to just tee it up for you on kind of open end because, as we discussed before the show, I like the idea that I feel like you are someone who has something to say. You haven't always been handed a microphone or been on camera to be able to do it. You have a great career. You've accomplished some great things. It's a great story, I believe. There's people out there that could be watching that might be younger or just stuck in their career or contemplating making a move. What's one or two things just from your heart you would say to somebody who might be in that situation right now that you've been through that maybe could help inspire them or that they could learn from?
Bet on yourself. Bet on yourself and don't be afraid to fail. That's a hard one, right? And people, I've heard that a lot. Don't be afraid. But until you really live it, I mean, you have to just jump in. Don't be afraid to fail. You're gonna fail. You're gonna fail. That you watch the all the memes. You watch Michael Jordan, how many free throws he missed, or how many game-winning shots he missed, or whatever. But highly successful, right? I mean, think of it like a baseball player. If you can bat 300, you're in the Hall of Fame,
Yeah,
right?
30%.
So you're gonna fail. Learn from it and just bet on yourself. I mean, if you think that if you want to entertain it and you want to get into the role, it's not for the faint of heart. I'm going to tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. Sales is not for the faint of heart. I don't know how many times I can say that, but the highs are really good. The lows can be low. It's one of the reasons why I love golf so much. I play golf, right? Always played sports, but golf is one that's really similar to sales, right? You cannot get too high because the golf gods are going to shine upon you. And right,
Hmm.
that triple bogey's hidden, it's right around the corner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
how do you maintain? Find a way to maintain, set your own successes. Don't be afraid to fail. You're going to, but you're also going to succeed. If you believe in yourself, you'll be fine.
Yeah. Eric, I had some great advice. I love hearing that. Bet on yourself. Simple, but very profound. And so I think today, thank you for being here, first of all, and thank you for sharing your story, personal story, business story. Much appreciated. And someone is going to take that away from watching this and go bet on themselves. And I think that's really what we're trying to accomplish here. And
Fantastic.
it's exciting just to think about that, because you've had those pivots in your career where you've made some tough decisions, I'm sure, and things have obviously worked out well for you. So I think you have a lot to be proud of. And I can tell you, I'm proud and honored to have you here on the show today. Yeah, because I tried to avoid, but I have to say, when you first started at HP, you and I were in the same training class, right?
Yeah,
We
I
started
remember.
together.
I
So of
remember.
course, I saw you back in those days, and you've come a long way, my friend, and you have a lot to be proud of. So
Thank you
thank
so
you
much. And thanks
again.
for everything that you're doing for the community. I think we need it more and more. We need education. And yeah, thanks for everything you're doing. Appreciate it. And thanks for the opportunity.
Sure thing, Eric. Anytime. Thank you, everyone. See you on the next one. Take care.